Hi guys, so it looks like what we was watching for in terms of North Korea is taking place. The Korean War is to be declared officially over after 65 years. It's not quite declared over just yet, but the talk of it actually being declared officially over is on the table. The problem with the end to this, or the official end to this war, is that South Korea and North Korea were not co-signers of the agreement that brought this essential ceasefire. So the war began in 1950 and most fighting came to an end with an armistice 3 years later, but peace was never officially declared and the two countries have been officially at war ever since. At their first summit in more than a decade, the two sides announced they would seek an agreement to establish permanent and solid peace on the peninsula. The two leaders declare before our people of 80 million and the entire world there will be no more war on the Korean peninsula and a new age of peace has begun. Okay. The statement included promises to pursue military arms reduction, cease hostile acts, turn their fortified border into a peace zone, and seek multilateral talks with other countries such as the United States. North Korean leader Mr. Kim and South Korean President Moon announced after their summit on Friday that the Koreas would push for three-way talks, including Washington, or four-way talks that also included Beijing, on converting the armistice into a peace treaty and establishing permanent peace on the Korean peninsula. The Koreas said they hope the parties will be able to declare an official end to the war by the end of this year. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in to visit Pyongyang sometime this autumn, though it is not clear whether that event will include the official end of the war. Now, this is the part that interested me because while President Donald Trump has given his blessing for the Koreas to discuss an end to the war, there can be no real solution without the involvement of Washington and other parties such as China that fought in the war, because South Korea wasn't a direct signatory to the armistice that stopped the fighting. So even though the fighting was on the Korean Peninsula and they call it the Korean War, the agreement that put a temporary end or a halt to the war that was going on wasn't signed by South or North Korea, and was signed by Washington and China. It's interesting because alongside the news of them wanting to announce an official end to the war, which we said would happen and which we were looking for and, is coming to pass, the Korean leaders aim for end of the war, complete denuclearization is the other thing that they're aiming for, and that's the other thing that they've mentioned in this time frame, denuclearization. And again, I just want to point out how uncanny it is that we're looking at this time, the year of the dog, the Wuji year of the dog. Other translations, other interpretations haven't panned out, but some have. This is one that is panning out right now as we speak. No nuclear, denuclearization, love, peace. The girl with the tiger on her back representing Korea. That is exactly what's happening. Peace, denuclearization. That is the two words that they are actually using. But then we have this figure, which I think represents America, and we have the tanks before that, which I think represent China, the two signatories to the agreement. There can be no peace without these two countries signing the deal. And according to this video, it looks like that's not going to happen. So while we've got talk of denuclearization and of peace, end of the an official end to the war and possible unification of the Korean Peninsula, China and America, according to this video, according to IPEC Goat 2, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. While the talk of denuclearization, unification, and peace is going on, and it appears that the unification of Korea is set, something else happens. And that's what I explained in the last video. These 5 explosions that happen in the background look like fireworks, look like some sort of party, given more weight by the fact that he's blown on a party favor. But we also know that earlier in the scene, earlier in the video, we have a scene where a missile is fired at a mosque or a temple or maybe some place of worship in this scene here. And then after that, 5 missiles come out. And I believe those 5 missiles that come out of here are the 5 explosions that we see in the background on the Korean Peninsula. That's not to say that the explosions take place on the Korean Peninsula, but they take place during that time. So I just wanted to make that clear and point out again, we are seeing events that we have been looking for unfolding, and if the interpretations are correct, at some point during this conversation of denuclearization, peace, and unification, war is going to happen. Most likely starting in the Middle East with something associated with Iran and Israel. And that's what brings me onto this scene. This is the, I'll just show you that scene. Sorry, I had it already played on another screen. But basically, yeah, this is what I think is coming next. The attack that leads to these more explosions, 5 of them. We don't know if it's 5. 5 could be just a representation of the month, for example. These missiles happen in May, the 5th month. Again, that's just an interpretation. I have no solid information to say that that's exactly what's going to happen. But this is the way that I'm looking at it. So we then have information coming out in terms of news reports about Iran and Israel as they have been coming out. Iran saying they will punish Israel for the alleged airstrike in Syria. Now, this isn't the same threat of punishment that I spoke about before. This is a confirmation of punishment. So the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Shamkhani, I can't say it, said on Tuesday that the Islamic Republic will definitely punish Israel for the airstrike on the Syrian T4 airbase near Homs, in which several Iranian officers were killed. The Israeli regime's aggression against Syria is a breach of this country's national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and runs counter to all international regulations and principles, he said in a news conference which was broadcast on state television. When a regime assumes the right to violate another country's airspace in a planned move and also to target forces fighting with terrorism, it should have definitely considered its consequences and retaliatory reactions before. However, the timing and other specifics were unclear as of yet. So we don't know when Iran is planning to strike, but in relation to that, the US has stepped up surveillance of Iranian assets in Syria over concerns of a strike against Israel. So it's definitely on the table. For anyone who doesn't think that a strike is coming against Israel or Israel's going to strike Iran, I have nothing to say to you. US satellites, surveillance aircraft, drones and ships have stepped up operations to monitor the movement of suspected Iranian anti-air and ballistic missiles inside Syria due to rising concerns they could be used to strike Israel in the coming days. Now, I don't think that's just concern over the Iranian anti-air and ballistic missiles. I also believe that's concern over the Russian S-300 air defense system that they're putting in Syria as well. As we've reported, Russia have said, Israel, if you attack our air defense system, there'll be catastrophic consequences. Israel have said, Russia, if those air defenses attack us, we're going to attack them. And then at the same time, you've got Iran promising punishment for their attack on their base in Israel, and Israel promising retaliation and saying that they're ready to respond directly to Tehran if necessary. So the US continues to recognize Israel's right to self-defense and its view that Iranian weapons inside Syria could threaten Israel directly. I always run counterpoint to some of these reports because I read them and I think, okay, so it's fair for the US to recognize Israel's right to self-defense, but it's not fair for the US to recognize Syria's right to self-defense. And obviously, I kind of get torn in two in that respect because obviously, you know, I believe in the Bible and there are references to the Jews, not to Israel directly as the country or the state, but to the Jewish people. And the Jewish people are separated into different factions, just like the rest of the world is. You've got Zionists and you've got other more, occult side of Judaism, and then you've got the actual Jews. And, there's information out there as well that suggests that the Jews that God is talking about in the Bible, in the New Testament, after Jesus comes, is not the Jews that we know of in the Old Testament. By the time Jesus comes, because he died on the cross, and he died on the cross to save us from all our sins, because as human beings we're just incapable of resisting sin, in whatever form it may be. There's no one perfect, so the simple fact is everybody sins and everybody has sins, and the only way to kind of get rid of them and be forgiven for them is to accept Jesus Christ as your savior. And that's why he came. He came because he basically, through his trials, through his suffering, through everything, I just see it as like, for every lash that Jesus received on his back, for every hour that he stayed on the cross was just an absorption of sin, and just, you know, taking that sin away from us, and giving us the opportunity to actually, you know, see heaven if we so choose to. And the choice is ours. We do have free will, and it's all up to us to, you know, it's all up to us depending on what we decide. So, you know, all the information that I put out for you guys, it's just to alert you to the fact, or not even alert you because I'm sure that you're aware, but it's just to, you know, codify, I guess, and to reiterate the fact that we are in some troubled times. This is the times of, you know, peace and safety. These are the times of war and rumors of war. It's the times of earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, and all those stuff are unfolding, already happening, you know, getting worse as the time progresses. And I don't think it's going to get any better. Excuse me. So, with all of that said, you've then got Israel, you know, saying that Iran has recruited 80,000 Shiite fighters in Syria. Israel's envoy to the United Nations said on Thursday that Iran had recruited at least 80,000 Shiite fighters, which it was training at a base just over 5 miles from Damascus. So obviously, if things are going to go down in Syria, then having 80,000 people there ready to fight is obviously just an indication as to your potential movements. Iran is definitely planning something. They've been moving, as it said in the previous report, they've been moving artillery and stuff into Syria. Russia have also been moving artillery and things like that into Syria. They've put out the warning saying that there will be a retaliation. When and where, we can only take a guess. I've already made my guesses on that. Possibly May 1st, possibly May 14th, Israel's Independence Day. I have no idea if anything's going to happen on those days, but I've already explained as to why I believe that those days are significant, and we'll see what happens. Today is April the 27th. It's also one of the days I'm watching just because it was supposed to be the day that North and South Korea met, or Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in met for the first time, but I think that happened yesterday, and again, I think they might be meeting again today in the Peace House, planting a tree. I'm not exactly sure on the time, and I'll look into that a little bit more, but definitely if they're meeting today, then something to watch today, again, just to see what comes out of there. We've already had the information we were looking for in terms of denuclearization and unification and an official end to this war. So just more things to really keep your eyes on. And then we've got reports coming out of Syria. So started with North Korea, moving on to Iran and Israel, and then now we're in Syria. So a general reveals that US aircraft are being disabled in Syria, the most aggressive electronic warfare environment on Earth. So apparently there's been some cyber attacks on some aircraft, US aircraft, specifically the EC-130, having been disabled. Not exactly sure what they mean by disabled. Is it no longer functional, or was it just a temporary thing? We're not exactly sure, but there was earlier reports of American drones in Syria also coming against some problems in the cyber world. And obviously, you know, Russia have been accused of hacking everything from, you know, elections in America to elections in the, the Brexit in the UK to France and Germany. And obviously, I really don't know. I'm not a hacker, so I'm not running in those circles. But I do know, obviously, hacking exists. Some people are really good at it. If it's a state-sponsored hacking attempt, then obviously they're going to have access to all the equipment and, you know, all the resources that they need in order to pull something like this off. And I don't think it's the US taking their own drones down, and obviously it's not going to be Israel or any of the other allies in the region. So it's either Iran or Russia, both of which are entirely capable of pulling it off. But it just goes to show you that the war is building up. At the moment, it's just kind of like little proxy tit for tats between like Syria and America and Israel and Iran and, you know, Russia and everybody else. So that is what it is at the moment, but that is going to escalate, and I think that's going to escalate during this time of the denuclearization talk. Again, not exactly sure specifically what date. I've already made my guesses, and that's what they are. They are guesses, they're not predictions. So we'll just leave that. The last thing I wanted to bring to you is just separate news from war and stuff like that, but equally focused on disturbing reports. Experts discussing warning signs of eruption of supervolcano at Yellowstone. Rumors are circulating that the supervolcano in Yellowstone National Park will erupt sooner than expected. Scientists say the eruption would blanket most of the US in ash, sending the Earth into a volcanic ice age. It's just a very short report, but I just wanted to just point that out because obviously I mentioned the fact that they had some sort of plan to drill into the volcano and pump it with water to alleviate some of the heat stress on the volcano. And as I said, that's a stupid idea. Drilling into any volcano, they do it. They have geothermal sites where they, use the heat off of the volcanoes, but those aren't volcanoes that could wipe out an entire continent and plunge the world into a volcanic winter. Yellowstone is. Yellowstone is a massive volcano. That's why it's called a supervolcano. Apparently, the lava runs miles underneath the Earth and runs miles across the continent, or across the continent, straight down to the Mexico border. That's a lot of lava, and you're gonna mess around with that, drilling holes into it, pumping it with water. I really don't recommend that. As I said, even if you don't live near Yellowstone, if you're hearing solid reports of them actually going forward with this plan, I suggest you make your voices heard. Unless you want to see a potential eruption of a supervolcano in your lifetime. I won't lie, it would be very interesting news and interesting to watch on TV, but the people in the immediate area, it wouldn't be fun for at all. And eventually, the whole world will be affected. So, I don't think it's something that we should be doing in terms of messing around with any volcano, but particularly supervolcanoes. And then the last thing is Kilauea. I don't know how to say it, but the volcano in Hawaii continues to overflow in terms of its lava flowing onto the crater floor. It's the largest spill in over 10 years, and it's still going on. As I said, I don't know if that's going to subside and just go back to normal, or if that's going to continue at its current level, or if it's going to escalate into something bigger, like a full-blown volcanic explosion. I'm not sure. The experts are not sure. The possibilities are low, but the possibilities are there. So that's why I present them to you. With all that said, obviously, sorry, just before I close, obviously I've mentioned how that connects to Obama and how that may connect to the IPEC vote video. So with all that said, you guys, it's just the times to really, keep your eyes open for everything, for absolutely everything. Not everything is significant, but you won't know if it is if you're not looking at it. So you guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and God bless.